Good afternoon, all you awesome people out there. My name is Scott Churchson, alongside Mr. J.D. Walker and Obie Spencer, and this is the Sports Den. And welcome to Spanglish Sports World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Rob Stats will be joining us forthwith. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android devices. When you download, kindly make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free, so I guarantee you cannot beat the price on that. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. All right, how we doing, folks? Hope you guys are rocking out there on this Tuesday, or basically if you're in Asia, Wednesday morning at this point. This is the Sports Den. Find us always on Twitter at Spanglish Sports Den, and on Instagram and Facebook at Spanglish World Sports Den. So, how you gentlemen doing? First off,
I'm spectacular. I really am.
Good.
I'm having a great Tuesday. Hopefully we'll cover a little bit, but I love the Olympic experience, even if NBC tried to make it as difficult as possible to enjoy. And I'm just ignoring what's happening in baseball right now in the National League East. And otherwise, just let's go.
It's a struggle for any Mets fan, borderline struggle for any Phillies fan. We can always talk about that one too. But first, Mr. Walker, how are you, sir?
Doing great today. How are you?
And no complaints. You got the rocking chair there, so you got it nice and chill. It's probably more comfortable than the rest of us, so I'm sort of jealous there, actually. But, we got some good stuff on the horizon. Yeah, you know what? Relax. Enjoy. Take a load off. Thank you to Obie, by the way, for pinch hitting and running the show last week. I had the nerve to actually not be available at all, so apologies for any inconvenience. But, yes, we're going to be talking the Olympics. We're going to be previewing the Paralympics, because that's something that I don't think gets enough love and respect, and I think it's high time we actually, show some accolades that way and preview that a little bit. We also have the obscure sport, which is really out of left field today. Oh, God, I'm looking forward to this one. But, let's start off with the Olympics, start off with the recap of this. Obie, you did point out something I think very astute. NBC, to their credit, had a lot to juggle and a lot of challenges there, but they didn't always make it easy unless you really wanted to watch some flavor of volleyball.
Yeah, I would like, so now to reveal everything, I have Comcast, which is, NBC is Comcast. And they'd have all these menus. You could pick a sport, and it was still I wanted to see Kyle Dake wrestle again and again and again. And I never saw one of his matches. All I know is he got bronze. It was they would tell you wrestling, tell you when it was on, but you couldn't set it to record, and you could only watch it on the internet sometimes. And the internet commercials were just atrocious. I don't mind making me watch the commercials, but don't randomize them. In the middle of something, we put on a 30-second commercial. Then for 4 hours, you get no commercials. And it's a commercial every 2 minutes. You're come on. This is not rocket science. You figured it out decades ago. Use that. So it was disappointing. I missed rugby men's sevens, which I love. Saw the women's sevens. But, trying to watch things was a pain in the butt. Thank goodness the men's gold medal basketball game was 10:30 p.m. our time. I was all right, I will stay up late and make sure I watch that. But otherwise, it was hard. It was hit and miss seeing what you wanted to see without knowing the results, which I'm sorry, but for me in sports, unless it's the utmost important thing to me, I don't. If I know the ending, I'm not going to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Obie, you touched on a point where NBC had it figured out decades ago, and they haven't improved it since. And that's exactly the problem. You can't show tape-delayed clips cut up for prime time of gymnastics and swimming and expect everybody to tune in when everybody got push notifications on their phone this morning of what Simone Biles did or didn't do, along with the rest of the gymnastics team. So, and if there's a specific thing outside of those, traditional Olympic, powerhouse sports, if you will, of swimming, track and field, volleyball, and gymnastics, you had to go through an insane amount of streaming menus, whether you had streaming or linear TV, and it was impossible to find. If you had to really be a fan of those sports in order to dig for them, and Obie, as you said, you still couldn't find them. So, and And what boggled my mind the most was there's enough of a time difference, 13 hours on the East Coast, where you had events that were running in the morning in Japan and could have been in prime time or at least late night prime time here. Yet they were still showing clips from things that happened, almost 24 hours ago. Like showing the women's 3-on-3 basketball final that had happened almost 24 hours prior at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. One night I was up late and working on something and just had it on as background noise. But I already knew the results since I happened to be looking for something earlier and stumbled on it. Just that doesn't work in 2021 with streaming, with all of the options available. This isn't 1984, and you can't show clips on tape delay and then wonder why your ratings are not good.
I think my take on this, I think the reason they did that was to push people towards Peacock. It is their streaming service. It's like, if you want to watch this, it's available over on Peacock. Go sign up for it,
and most people who are Olympic fans casually will not do that.
Agreed. Yes.
I have Peacock. As I said, I'm a Comcast customer. I get Peacock. No, it was no better. It was impossible to find. It was still hard to find the sports I want or set their sports to record. You know what option they gave me? This was incredibly stupid. Pick your favorite sports. When you wake up in the morning, we'll tell you what happened. I don't want to know what happens when I wake up in the morning. I want you to
say, do that here.
I'm actually trying not to do that. I want you to have them all recorded for me. That wasn't it was crazy. So I have Peacock by having Comcast, and no, it was not a good experience. So anyone who bought Peacock for this, I have to imagine they're going to be like, I'm done with Peacock. Like, thank you very much. I'm going to just keep my HBO Max and watch Suicide Squad and, and move on with life. As a Peacock haver, it was not beneficial.
Here's the one thing that I found is we did JD, you talked about having it on as background. And I think a lot of people across the country had it on as just background because there is enough variety and diversity in what they have to keep things, I think, interesting that way. But one of the biggest frustrations that I had is you could be ensconced in whatever is going on, whatever match. I mean, there was a 3-on-3 Spain basketball game, and it was really enjoyable. And it was coming right down to the wire. I think it was them and maybe Estonia or something. And it was like 4 minutes left. The score is tied. And it's like, just cut right out. And they went right to beach volleyball. And it's like, wait a minute, you're watching this, you're enjoying this. And I mean, I get it. Beach volleyball, you got 20 somethings and bikinis and topless, in no shirts like that. And it's higher ratings from that standpoint. But for us old farts, maybe we want to watch, 3-on-3 basketball.
Also, with NBC's coverage, I understand that we are in, the United States, so it will be primarily centered on American athletes. Mm-hmm. Yet NBC, for many Olympic cycles, has swung too hard the other way, where if Team USA doesn't have a presence in it or isn't expected to do very well, they just don't even acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And that was probably why they switched off of that 3-on-3 basketball game in Spain.
I get that part of it, but it was one of those things, like I said, you get interested in it and they just pull the rug out from underneath you. And it's not like they made an announcement that it was going to be on USA or any of the other stations that had it on. They're just like, we have decided you've seen enough of this. We'll go to something else instead. And it hurt the product, I think, because again, there's no resolution there. In certain cases, I mean, I understand why certain things couldn't be resolved, like the baseball, the men's baseball gold medal game. I mean, that was prime time for Japan. Japan was in it. I don't blame them for something like that. Granted, a lot of people here in the States and especially on the West Coast didn't end up watching that. But I understand there are certain things that are kind of out of their control in that regard. But there are certain things that I would have liked to have seen more of. Maybe some of the more obscure countries. The countries that finally had an athlete, I think Ecuador was got their first ever medal in cycling. That was cool there, but I wanted to see more of that. I want to see that kind of accomplishment. The problem that I think happens with countries like the US and China and, Russia, whatever they're calling themselves this time, is we're used to medals. We are expected them. I mean, It's in this case here, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how many and where he plays. But then you have these little tiny countries out there that are struggling, that are just so proud to have, 3 or 4 athletes there, regardless of what happens there. And I want to see those stories. I want to see stuff like that where they're just so Jones to be there on behalf of their country, no matter what the result is, no matter what the expectation is, where even if they fail, they're not going to have a public backlash like Simone Biles did when she's talking about the twisties, and that's the kind of stuff I like, the underdog kind of story, if you want to call it that.
I think you're right. There needs to be more of that. And you're right. And absolutely. Cause there's just like, oh, here's the sport. Here's somebody doing it. Let's take a look at it. This is some once in a lifetime, like the woman who won the bike race. She totally had that underdog story. She wasn't supposed to be there. The Dutch, I think it was, were supposed to dominate the sport, and this woman just got away, and nobody literally lost track of her being in the race. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Hey, Rob, I'm going to comment on that.
and that made it feel great story. But the other thing that goes along with that, and now is the people, when you do find these obscure sports, it's hard to figure out what the right level of information that should be given is for that sport. So I always think of it this way. Even when we watch football in America, the commentators are doing it like at an 8th grade level. Like there are plenty of people who are way more knowledgeable than the commentators express themselves to be. And I know I'm not more knowledgeable than Chris Collinsworth, although here's a guy over here, he doesn't sound like he's more knowledgeable than me, but that's on purpose. Yeah, it's on purpose. You got to get as many people. But I feel like with the Olympics, with the amount of options we have, not only should it be streaming, there should be level 1 introductory commentator, level 2, I think I know the sport commentator, and level 3, I'm an expert at this sport. Really tell me what's going on. Like they have the options to do that, because sometimes you're watching a sport and you're like, wow, this is athletic. I can tell that this is athletic, but I have no idea what the scoring is. Like, how does this work? What's going on? If it's a sport that you catch once, you're never going to know. Like there's
sometimes the best announcers are no announcers at all.
Could be.
Sometimes they talk especially for some of those obscure sports, while yes, having a bit of explanation for, what the rules are for something that isn't normally watched would be helpful. Sometimes it seems like the announcers are just talking to hear themselves talk. And, while there's more dead space to fill with no fans in the stands and no noise, so I understand that to a point, at the same time, sometimes you need to just shut up and let the moments go over the air.
I feel like that's a lost art across the globe now.
It absolutely is across broadcasting.
Everybody's trying to be the next Joe Buck. I call it Joe Buckitis. Like people hate Joe Buck for that reason, because it's constant like blah 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 blah, and it's like, bro, give me. And there's moments where like you look at some of the greatest moments in announcing, like the '80 Miracle on Ice, and Al Michaels like that's that. Just he was sitting there like, what am I going to say? And he couldn't think of anything. He's like, I just blurted out, "Do you believe in miracles?" Like he's like, and it just happened. And some of the greatest calls just happen naturally. So but you guys have great points too. It's like having a 3-man team, like Obie was saying, where it's basic level, intermediate, expert level, and it's something for everybody, because it's so true with Olympic sports. It's like, oh, this is a cool sport, but I know nothing about it. And you hook them in with the novice commentary, and they pick up on it, and they become more attracted to it. And it's like, oh, okay, now I get the intermediate stuff. And you never know, especially with younger fans, all of a sudden now they're hooked. Now it's a new athlete for that sport, and you've drawn them in, and it's like, oh, yeah. And I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of the Olympics. I was working most of the time, and I thank you guys for really dealing with my bizarre, insanely busy schedule the last month.
It's been a little chaotic on your side. We'll get through it.
But I actually, one of my highlights was I'm at the gym one morning. I look up, and they got it on the screen, and they have water polo on. And I actually played like at club water polo in college, and I was like, oh my God. I didn't care who was playing. I was just like, it's water polo. And I messaged my buddy from college. I was like, dude, I got to watch water polo this morning at the gym. And we were like swapping stories about playing against each other in club and intramurals. And I'm like, and I love it. And it was just, they were like, oh, and the other thing you guys brought up too was spot on. It was like, even there was stuff I wanted to watch, and I get an alert. I'm like, oh, don't have to watch that now. Like, I already know the outcome of it. It's fine.
Peek to the
You
end. The end of the movie.
Funny you mentioned water polo, Rob, because that also makes me think of an announcer point. Is that NBC as a major sports network has a lot of talented announcers throughout their roster that they can put into some sports that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily think of. The reason water polo made me think of that is that the most that I've ever watched a water polo game, I was with somebody visiting somebody in an old folks home, and they had and water polo had just happened to be on the TV in the common room, and they had Doc Emmerich announcing water polo.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, all right, Doc is one of the best. What is this? What is this? And I was watching water polo, and because it was Doc Emmerich, I was getting into it. Like, wow, this is actually pretty cool when you have the right announcer doing it. The key is the right one.
Now, here's my question. I heard
like
how
that.
Kenny Albert.
Go on, Scott.
I was going to say, I saw Kenny Albert do that too, but here's my question. Did Doc know what he was talking about? And the reason I'm asking that is because sometimes I watched some of the broadcast, and the play-by-play announcer literally came on air. It's like, yeah, I don't know this sport that well, and is talking to the color commentator and asking questions, but not asking from the perspective of like helping the audience understand, but literally to ask so he himself could understand it as he's talking about it. So did Doc know what he was talking about?
I'll kind of answer what you're saying is Doc, like water polo is a sport that works for someone like Doc because it's similar to hockey, which is like right in his wheelhouse. And it's like there's sports like coming out of the college world too. Like I've noticed it where the like even when we have Mike on, Mike will tell you this. Like it's so much easier for him to transition from one sport to another. He just needs to know the basis of it. Like water polo is hockey for Doc. Like for Mike's got baseball. He does volleyball. Something like different. When you can kind of just like the interchangeable parts or commentary, it is so much easier. But like JD's saying, you get some other people who come in and it's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like you can't take somebody from ice skating, figure skating, and be like, here, announce football. And it's like,
admittedly, I've fallen into that myself. You know, when I worked at WSU, I sometimes got thrown into things like women's soccer and softball, which at the time I unfortunately did not know very much about. So it sounded pretty bad. So I'm guilty of this myself, but also the right professional can make it work. When Al Michaels did the Miracle on Ice, I think he'd done maybe one or two hockey games in his career before the Olympics that year. Like if any, like he was very new to calling hockey, and he ended up with one of the most iconic calls of all time.
But what's interesting about that, and if you notice, you did talk about, I think Rob, you said it, that he didn't know what to say and just kind of blurted out ad-lib, do you believe in miracles? Yes. But then he let the emotions just run. He didn't say anything. He didn't capitalize it, like burn it. He just let you get caught up in that world, and between, the players, and then there was panning over to the crowd. And then there was a point where they're panning to the crowd and you see the final, and he is just letting it go. And that was just so perfect. And eventually, like a minute and a half later, then he talked. Nowadays, I think the problem is, and they win. And we're going to go into something like this. And it kills the drama of it by talking over it. TV in general, I think, does this too, where you lose a dramatic moment by having to talk over the top of it.
Or you cut right to a commercial or something. It's like, oh, they won. Okay, we'll be right back after this. And it's like, no, like I want to see them celebrate. Like I want to see, like I did catch some of the highlights of women's volleyball when they won the gold. And you want to see, like, even I saw the highlights from the closing ceremony where the player, she's crying in the ceremony, and they talk about like people don't like, you put your life into this, and typically it's 4 years. For them, it was 5 because it was supposed to be last year and it got pushed back a year. And it's like, for like, especially in that, I think it was Williams was her last name, was the volleyball player. This is probably her last shot at it. And it's like, you have that moment, like that's what you want to see. Don't even talk. Just let the crowd, like let the viewers soak that in. Like her teammate comes over, is giving her a hug, and they're literally like, they're holding up their medals, looking at him like, we have them. Like this is real. And it's like, there's nothing to say there. It's just enjoy that moment, soak it in, and let it be in its natural state. And don't try to make it more, because there's nothing you can really do there to make it better. Just enjoy it as it is.
Men's basketball was the same thing. After they won, they're all coming together. They're in the center of the court. And it was just yabba, 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 yabba. Just, let's enjoy that moment watching them, especially watching pros who won a championship that they got no money for. Like, I mean, at that point, you're like, these guys are so wealthy compared to everyone else who's here, except for the guys on the French team themselves. But, like, they were just like, and just to see them gather and, like, you miss they're jumping up and down like they just won the college championship, not, like that much excitement. And you're just like, yabby, 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 yabby. Oh, everyone was down in this team. Stop it. We all know the story.
Part of that is because an Olympic gold medal is not the highest achievement in basketball. That's the difference between a sport like basketball and other sports. Although I will give a shout out to Vince Carter, who actually did better than I expected in color commentary for the Olympic basketball and during the gold medal game. Even threw some Frederick Weiss shade in there when when Gobert almost got posterized at one point in the third quarter.
But yeah, like I said, it's amazingly blink of an eye. Now it's over.
Yep.
Which is bizarre for me in this case. And granted, we have the Winter Olympics coming up in February, but I don't know about you, but I'm not as excited about the Winter Olympics as I am the summer because there's not enough diversity. If it doesn't involve like ice or snow, it really isn't a sport.
Which raises the question, why is basketball in the Summer Olympics? It is a winter sport. Just putting that out there.
Valid point. And like it's a great point too. The diversity of it would be great because it would take you out of I'm sure people who watch events would I would rather go sit in an arena that's not filled with ice and not freeze half the time. There's a couple of sports that you could probably throw in to the Olympics, but I guess with hockey being the same, at the same time too, that takes up a lot of the arena space. So that could be another list for us, like sports that should be in the Winter Olympics that aren't, like crossover sport. You could do indoor track and field in the Winter Olympics because it is a thing in college and everywhere else. Like put them in the dome and let them run.
Unless basically they're considering speed skating more or less in the same vein.
Yeah. I think it's partly logistical concerns. It's partly ratings. Where you, as far as team sport of put item in goal, get points. You have that covered with hockey in the same building which you would use for basketball.
Well, wait, but in the Summer Olympics, you do it in a pool, you do it on a court, you do it with it's all. Then you say, well, instead of putting the ball, you put your whole body in with rugby. I mean, it's.
More importantly, you will never get the NBA to shut down their season for a month in the middle of the season for players to go to the Olympics. That's been a bone of contention in the NHL, and actually got to a point where they could not get an agreement for the Pyeongchang Olympics in 2018, and still haven't even figured out if NHL players are going to be allowed to go to the Beijing games 6 months from now. So
that was one of the. So good.
So if hockey is having issues with the timing of it happening in the middle of the season versus basketball where it happens during the off season, even if only by a few days this year, it's a much different logistical challenge, and with much more money at stake for NBA versus the NHL, it would never happen.
Well, that's the same problem. That's the same problem the MLS has right now because they're starting the Leagues Cup tonight. So you got 4 teams from the MLS, 4 teams from Mexico going out in this best of 8 final right now in the middle of the season. And I had the press conference earlier. I threw the question out on Reddit on the NYCFC page. And it's like, do you care? And a lot of them are like, no, I really want to see. I'm more concerned about what it does against the regulation match we have against Inter Miami on Saturday. So you have that concern as well, where you pull a player out of the middle of the season and they get injured in, I'm not going to call it an exhibition, but not something tied to the regular season, which they're normally paid for. And it's a concern because if one of the players in MLS gets injured, for this match tonight, tomorrow, whatever it ends up being, they're out for the rest of the year. and that screws up the rest of your season. That same kind of situation can happen with basketball as well.
So with soccer, though, that's normal, right? I mean, that's just normal. How
I know,
soccer
but it's still
works.
It's one of those things where I think, the fans like the idea of it, but they're also gravely concerned by it, and honestly, so are the coaches.
Soccer also has a longer tradition of playing for the pride of your country in international matches, where the World Cup is more important than the Olympics.
You just saw the Gold Cup, so.
Yeah, and then you have, and there's repeated breaks for international competitions, for Gold Cups, and UEFA championships and so forth. That's already built in to the MLS season, if you will. To have repeated breaks for other contests.
And going back to basketball, I think with what's happening at the lower ranks of basketball, in the fact that there are now lower ranks of basketball, the number 2 pick was out of the G League. We may get to the point where, just in general, we stop sending NBA guys from every country and letting it be amateurs again, because there will be reason to give those guys exposure if you're the NBA. Because if they're not being right, but so the money is get those G League guys out there, build their reps up, let them play internationally so people know them. So when they show up, because that's what they're losing by sucking the kids out of college and taking, like, people don't know them. And if they're going to go to minor leagues, get them out there, get people to know them so that, whoever he is showing up on my team next year. I can't wait. That's why they have summer ball, Las Vegas summer ball on TV, so you can see these rookies, so you can get excited about them.
So here's my proposal would be the midpoint of both of those points, which is exactly what they do for soccer in the Olympics right now, which is no players over 25, and there's a max of. I'm not sure what the number is, but I want to say 5 players per squad that are playing in top professional leagues. So if you have a rule where each country can have a max of, say, 3 NBA players and none over 25, I think that would level the playing field, and also and also provide that same exposure for younger players. You had players, especially, where this time around you had the top players that didn't want to go, most of them who are veterans who've been there before. But on the flip side, you had a player like Trae Young, who is young enough and wants the experience. He wanted to go, and the team didn't pick him. Even after Bradley Beal had to drop out due to COVID, they still didn't pick him.
Right.
A lot of it comes down to money, though, because basically when you have amateurs or lesser known people, or you got players like Kevin Durant, who are more people inclined to see worldwide, not just locally, but worldwide, who are they more inclined to see? And I think that's what some of this comes down to as well. And by the way, props to that man for signing a modest contract that I think will help him survive the year. 4 years, $198 million.
Well, but to JD's point, at the moment when Beal went down, I don't think there was a bigger name in basketball than Trae Young. Like, I think everybody wanted to see Trae Young at that exact moment. Like, so he would have been the drawer. More people to watch, because he's fascinating. The man invented a new move in basketball, which is the floater pass for the jam. There's a word, floater alley-oop. He invented this new, like, I watched him do it to the Knicks, to the Sixers, and even a little bit to the Bucks. And he's unbelievable. And he's the guy you want to watch more than anyone else in the NBA right now. So I think he would have totally drawn more eyes. Imagine him doing that and passing it to Durant, 7 foot over Rudy Gobert. That would have been a poster for sure.
Nice. All right. So it is now 4:30. As always, you can find us on Twitter at SSW Sports Den and Spanglish World Sports Den on both Instagram and on Facebook. I want to take a little tiny bit of a break right now, because we're going to switch over shortly to the Paralympics and a preview of what's coming up there for August 24th. But in between, we have the obscure sport. For this one specifically, if we can pull it up, Dan and or Janet, whichever one's working on it at the moment, This is something that I pulled from Glacier Bay, Alaska. So can we play this one? Okay. Bollocks, it's crap.
Is that Toe
All right,
Mater?
so what's that?
Is that Toe Mater?
No, but you're close. This is Glacier Bay, Alaska right here. And the annual competition of driving cars off of a cliff. They drive as every July 4th. What they end up doing is there's a 300-foot cliff, and they literally drive the cars off the edge and basically just damage the snot out of them. The cars are rebuilt, tossed over the side, and then rebuilt again. This has been something that's been going on for quite a number of years at this point, although apparently they had to stop it after one person was inadvertently killed. But in this particular case, this is the 2019 Glacier Bay Basin car dive, as they call it. And folks come from pretty much all over Alaska. It's about 3,000 people in this particular case. And they just get together as a big old fun event where they just drive cars off of cliffs. Just to clarify, they themselves are not in the car at that point. The car is either remote control or set ahead of time to drive over the cliff at top speeds and try and get the furthest distance that it is capable of getting. There we go. And down. So.
That answers my question, which was going to be if they're in the cars or if it's, a chicken thing where you just jump out at the last second, or are we going full Thelma and Louise here?
Yeah. So that was basically what we got here.
That's going to hurt the badassery score.
Yeah, but we do have to actually rate them in this case. We have the 5 different categories. Rob, you've been off for a while. I'll leave it up to you if you want to do it now. Otherwise, I'm going to defer over to Obie first. Your call.
Defer also because of the fact that
also,
we have
I want to
5
point
categories, so I got to know what the category is.
We have to also point out you threw shade to me right before you came on, young man. Because I was talking about the fact that there was underdog, athletes and everything from around the globe.
Oh, yeah.
And your comment right when you came on was, Scott wants to see more athletes that look like him.
Well, I was referencing your post on Facebook because Scott posted. It was one of the swimmers. It was like the swimmer. And he's like, I look like an Olympic athlete. I'm like, that's why Scott wants to see these. There's like this big fat guy.
My response was basically sumo wrestling is not a sport in the Olympics, but
it should be. It totally should be.
Yeah, dude, I would love to watch that. But
no, that's what I was referencing. Though was your post with the 2 swimmers. Like it was like an American guy with a 6-pack and like rib, and there's this other dude next to him with like the swim, like the long swim shorts on, and he's just standing there like kind of a beer gut, like I'm gonna go swim right now, and I'm like, okay.
To be brutally honest, I forgot.
I think there's like a 50-something-year-old lady who competed for, I want to say Latvia or Estonia, one of the former Soviet countries, in one of the shooting sports, and that was her 6th Olympics, and the first one was for the Soviet team in 1988. So there's hope.
Exactly, we always have a chance for this. So,
what about the guy?
I mean, get the curling in the Winter Olympics. That's where the people are who look like you.
There was a dressage rider who was over 60.
Yeah, well, dressage is we had conversations about that one before.
It's your favorite sport, Scott. You can't deny it. We know.
It's not a sport. Actually, if you pull up that picture, if you don't mind, real quick, we're just talking about Olympic swimmers in this particular case. Again, this actually gives me hope that I could, in fact, be an Olympic athlete at some point. If people are 55 or 60 years old and look like the picture being pulled up in a second. But in the meantime, do we have any ratings that we want to roll with? And who wants to lead this puppy off?
I will go first. Car diving oddity. I'm going to give it a D. There's something intrinsically like this is what I want to do all the time and I've done it. I've launched Matchbox cars off of roofs and
thank you, Janet,
on a much smaller scale. But never, with a full car. But that really reduces the oddity down to a D. Now, actually doing it with a full-size car, that takes the obscurity all the way up to A. Because everyone's done it with a Matchbox car off the roof of their house or something, but never with a real full-size car. Playability and enjoyment. I'm going to imagine if I lived in Alaska, I'd probably have the ability to have a wrecker, and definitely anyone seems to be able to do it. A. Watchability. Yes, I could watch this. There are times when we have these videotapes and we talk about these things and I just forget about it forever. In between this show and the next, I'm definitely going to be watching myself some of this videos because this is definitely A for watchability. Badassery, I'm going to just go with C. It's kind of average because they're jumping out of the cars. They're not in the car. Now, if you told me those were stuntmen in the cars,
Oh, no.
there would have been nothing I could have gotten. That would have been it. Top of the line, A. But no, just to C for badassery.
Nice. Which one of you guys want to go next? I'll go after that.
I'll go. Yeah. Now I didn't know I was waiting to figure out what the badassery category was. Yeah.
You've been out of the loop, and that's fine.
Yeah. I'm with like Obie. Oddity is like a C-. As a stunt guy, I've seen this stuff before, so I'm like, okay. And obscurity, like C for oddity and obscurity. Playability and enjoyability though, but definitely a B. And watchability an A. Because it's like the reason most people watch NASCAR and Indy. Like you actually get the wreck. Like every time is a wreck. And just watching that video, seeing some of those, like how they hit and they roll, you're like, oh, this is awesome. But the badassery was also a C because it's like when you said there was one accidental death, like the whole time when the video started, I'm like, wait, are you in the car? Like you're driving the car? Like because I'm thinking like you have to have a giant roll cage, and even that would like still crumple with a certain amount of impact. I'm thinking like what Obie was saying, or like JD said, like, was it a game of chicken where you jumped out? And I'm thinking there's a great story from Rick Seaman, who was my stunt driving instructor he's from Los Angeles.
I recognize that name.
He did a stunt one time and for a car show, and he jumps out the car playing chicken, and he got his foot hooked on the seatbelt, and the car was rolling around the track, dragging him. But it was only going like 25 miles, like it was going slow. But that's what I was thinking with the accidental death. I'm like, did somebody go to jump out and like get caught and just like go over the cliff with him? But
no, it was a drunk person that got stuck.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like somebody who's like stupid, like ran out onto the cliff, like, hey, look at me, and then the car landed on him. Like, oh, okay, Wile E. Coyote, that's what you get. But yeah, overall, like I think it is something I totally watch, and if I could control it, like drive, like I'm just gonna remote control drive a car off a cliff. Let's do it.
Well, yeah, Tuesday, but yeah, for some reason in my head, it gives me the thoughts of like Dukes of Hazzard and such. But so did you? Yeah, you got all your ratings.
Yeah, right? I got everything up. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to open up something else in this. Jay, you want to go, please?
Yeah, I'll go with a B for oddity, because of thousands of people getting together for this that's impressive in itself. But I've seen better ones from ones that we've covered here. Was it obscurity is the next category?
Oh, yeah.
B plus, because this isn't something that it would fit in Obie is redneck entertainment one of the categories, because I think this might fall into that one.
I'm thinking we need to get that. You just made it, and it's going to be number one above the mud jumping.
Yes.
Yeah, the mud jumping and the mashed potato wrestling are the other ones that come to mind for that. Playability a D, because even if it is chicken or remote controlled, there is still a possibility of death apparently. So that makes it a little less playable for me. Watchability a B minus. Like I'd watch it, but I would probably get tired of it after a bit. Badassery is C. With deductions for not actually being in the car.
We are horrible people. We're all like, it's a whip sport. You're not in the car.
Get in the car.
Well, Rob, I don't know about you, but
we've seen so many of these where it's just like, this other one was more, but like compared to say Taser Ball or the Fire Soccer, it's different.
Well, either one of you guys.
I was here for Taser Ball. That was one of my last shows, I think.
I was not on for Taser Ball, but I watched that episode. I would have loved to have been a part of that.
Taser Ball badassery is an A. Taser Ball badassery is an A.
You know what we should do? As I'm thinking about this right now, maybe we should revisit some of the old obscure sports and re-review them.
New chart, yeah.
With new chart, new videos.
Had a list.
Yeah.
If only somebody did.
Taser Ball is a great solution for the soccer players that flop too much.
Yes.
We'll give you something to flop about now.
Tell me about it. Dude, I swear to God, it's like tap flop. I mean, you think basketball gets the moniker a lot of times for flopping. No, soccer does. I mean, I've seen some really oh, thank you. Obie literally just dropped the entire list of like all the ones that we've done and so far. God, there's a lot of them.
Except for Taser Ball, because I actually missed that episode.
All right, we're gonna have to do an episode pretty soon. We're gonna have to revisit some of these. and get that video issue resolved, because it's going to make or break this whole thing. All right. So in my particular case, oddity, I give it a B+. I mean, this is one of those things that you never really, you wonder it existed, but when you think of stuff like this, you're thinking first like Demolition Derby, so you don't actually think of, things that involve a car and a cliff. So props there. Obscurity, I got to give it an A- on this one, because again, it's not something you typically think about. If you're, all of us have like thrown things off a cliff before and all, drop stuff off, buildings and such, but a car is a newbie. So A- there. Playability, F. I can't do it in so many different ways. One, because I like living, but also two, because in my heart, I can't wreck the car. I hate to be that kind of person that would have to wreck the car. I mean, and maybe part of it is the fact that I just inherited a 66, my wife and I just inherited a 66 Plymouth Satellite. And I can't look at a car like that has a soul, any car that has a soul, and be like, you're going to die. So I got to give that as hard an F as I can possibly do. Watchability, though, the sadist in me, B+. I could watch that for a while. I think it's one of those things that might lose some level of interest, which is why alcohol, I think, needs to be involved to offset it and keep it interesting. A couple of beers, a couple of glasses of wine, and I think I could probably really enjoy this for hours. But badassery, I've got to give it an A. I mean, this has got like Dukes of Hazzard written all over it. And if you're like a 70s or 80s kid, you knew Dukes of Hazzard and you knew, everything about that kind of era, which, by the way, I want to pull up that picture. I want to see if you guys can take a guess on this. Pulling up a picture, by the way, speaking of Dukes of Hazzard, Denver Pyle, who played Uncle Jesse. In the picture there, do you take a wild guess how old you think Uncle Jesse was in that picture? Or take a guess in general how old he was.
I'm waiting to see the picture. Hold on. Is it in the chat?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Oh, yeah, I see it.
There it is. Yeah, that's Uncle Jesse.
I feel like I should know the answer to that one.
What's that?
I'm going to say 35.
He's 47 in that picture.
Is he really? Wow. I would have thought way older. Way older.
He's 47 in season 1. So for me, who's turning 46 next month, I think you already are 46. He is literally a year older than you, and boy, he did not age well in that time. It's the beard.
47.
You're 47 now? Okay, so you're the same age as Uncle Jesse.
Yeah.
And not the Uncle,
change your hairdo.
And not the Uncle Jesse from Full House, which actually, I'd rather be a 47-year-old. That Uncle Jesse. So, all right, thank you, Janet.
I'd rather be 57.
I'll take the John Stamos skincare plan for sure.
So, okay, so we got a little.
Right. He has not aged in 25 years.
No, he's not allowed. No. He's an immortal like the Highlander.
It's all that yogurt.
Or possibly a Dunedain. What's that?
It's all that yogurt.
Yes.
And one other point, if you're going to destroy a car, there's other more fun ways to do this. Another one, maybe we could go over it or talk about it a little bit. Look up the years of Le Mans race.
Oh,
Le Mans is pun intended. It is spelled like lemons.
Okay.
It is a race that some people in the West Coast, I want to say Nevada or Arizona or something, where they you look up where you enter your junk car into a race, and it can be modified for safety to a certain point, but there's a dollar amount cap of the amount that you could put into it. Mm-hmm. And if your car whoever survives the 24-hour race and wins, gets a prize. I read about it and all the stuff that goes into it. I believe there was an article in ESPN magazine a few years back that I read about, and it was fascinating. Like, right. if I had the means and stamina to do that, I would look into something like that. But that seems like a great way to destroy a car. And there's match penalties where, if instead of getting like a 10-second penalty, like your car gets destroyed in the infield.
All right, take a look at it. We can always obscure sport that guy too. All right, so we got about 10 minutes left, and I definitely want to hit Paralympics while we got the time. As I mentioned, that's going to be kicking off also NBC, so props there. Starting on August 24th. There's a lot of athletes from, again, around the world on this, and a lot of sports with a little bit of a different twist. Soccer, blind soccer in this case, where it beeps. You have athletes there that are missing limbs. You've got like wheelchair basketball. You've got a lot of different things in the pipeline. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about if you had any interest, what you guys would take away from that, what you guys, if anything, would be watching.
I would watch. I'm looking at a list here. It's I don't know if it says International Paralympic Committee. I like wheelchair events. Like I think they're also like wheelchair basketball. They have wheelchair rugby. Like sign me up for that. Because I mean, it's like is that also because I've heard it referred to as like murder ball because it's just like I mean even wheelchair basketball is so physical and you see guys like the chairs flipping over and guys just get up. They have football 5-a-side on here. I'm like, oh yeah. Some of them are a lot more, and like they have winter sports, like obviously ice hockey, curling, skiing, but even like they've got powerlifting. They've got so many things that are just, and I used to do cover a lot of like Special Olympic events in college as like part of our community service for athletes and everything. And it's inspirational. First of all, I mean, we used to do like a bowling event every spring. And you just go out there with the kids, and it's like it really just reminds you of how you should appreciate everything you have. As you see kids, special needs athletes, disabilities, and you're like, you know what? Like, thank God I've got everything works. I'm functioning normal, and it's just. But they go out there, they have fun, and it's like you see them overcome the disabilities and the disadvantages, and it's like I'll probably enjoy watching the Paralympics way more than the regular Olympics. It's just like on an inspirational level, like that's I'm just like sign me up for this. And then you see, like I said, some of these sports, they're so much more physical and intense, and you're like, yo, this is great, dude. Like they don't care. It's like I don't care that I'm disabled or something's wrong. Like it doesn't stop them, and I love that about it.
Yeah, that's the underdog thing I was talking about. I'm sorry, go ahead, Obie.
Yeah, so
I read wheelchair rugby. Go ahead, Robbie.
Take a point because I've heard Paralympics speak on this and separate the Special Olympics from the Paralympics because the Special Olympics are to help a particular group of people feel included. The Paralympics are to separate the best of people based on having particular disabilities. And there are 3 medals, right? That's it. In the Paralympics, there are 3 medals. There is a winner. Not everybody's a winner. These guys and gals are dead serious. I mean, we are, 6 years removed from Petronas fighting to be in the real Olympics with his, and so to me, like I've seen bits and pieces like the murder ball stuff. It is just as crazy and intense as the regular Olympics, except I don't necessarily have a favorite sport where you don't know any of the people. So in my house, just like the regular Olympics were on, these will be on. I don't know if I'll have any favorite sports, or we'll see what I have to say about them as I watch them, although I'll be away more often during that time frame than I was during the regular Olympics. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited from a national perspective, just like the regular Olympics. Go USA, root for those guys and gals. No lying there. So, but to say I know what sport I'm going to watch, I'm going to be much more comfortable being at NBC's win than I was with the regular Olympics. That's for
sure. Some Paralympic athletes of note for Team USA that I just read about before. Chuck Aoki, who's a Japanese-American wheelchair rugby player. I read about that and his struggles and how, when his grandparents immigrated from Japan to possibly to playing in the Paralympics in Japan is full circle for him. Jessica Long, who is 29, yet has 23 medals already in Paralympic swimming, going back to when she was 12. So she's like the Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky of the Paralympics, and she's still going strong for probably a few more Olympic cycles. And reading about David Brown, a legally blind runner, where they run with spotters running along with them. That can kind of keep them in the lane. Because that way they don't run outside their lane and get disqualified. So part of it, I want to watch that just to see how that works.
Olympic or wheelchair fencing is what actually, strangely enough, intrigues me the most. I don't know why. There's just something about it that really, really makes me interested.
I picture it being like Ben-Hur with the chariot races, just the spikes coming out.
But yeah, if you think, because you think about fencing, there's so much regular fencing, it's so much back and forth, like forward and backwards. And with the chair, it really becomes more of the handling of the sword and of the saber, and it's more of a like kind of hand-eye coordination and the quickness. And it's one thing when you compare Paralympics to the regular Olympics. There are some assets where the skill level of the Paralympic athlete at certain stages is significantly greater than a regular athlete, and like fencing would be one of them. Like their hand speed and their kind of hand-eye coordination is probably
you can't dodge.
You don't parry, you're not moving, so you're like the upper body stuff is so much more superior. And it's, as a regular athlete, like sometimes that's the stuff you want to look into for your training. Like, what is this athlete doing? Because this is their entire strategy. This is their entire style. Can I improve that in my game and my style and become a better performer?
Right, because something like fencing. So my son took fencing just long enough for me to know it's just like many other martial sports, just like boxing, where you're throwing hands, but your hands are the least important thing. It's what's going on with your footwork, and they just spent days and days and weeks on just footwork. So now you're saying, oh, sorry, no footwork. Now you figure this out. Fencing is also sideways. Now it's going to be interesting to watch for sure. Here's hoping that the official who's going full circle, let's hope when we watch these sports, the commentators understand that we don't know everything about these sports and teaches us what's going on.
I think that's plausible. All right. We got to wrap this up. We got a minute and a half left. Tune in tonight for Tales from the Film Set as Obie, myself, alongside Rob Luckington and JT McGuire, break down the recent decision by Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker to quit Doctor Who, plus also talking a little Suicide Squad. That'll be 8 o'clock tonight.
Wait, I didn't know this. How did I? Because I've been so busy, I didn't know Jodie quit.
Jodie and dude, pop on. I don't care. Be my guest. Same link as here. Yeah, we're talking the decision by Jodie and Chibs to that they're walking away after this next season.
Okay, I thought you meant they quit, like they bounced. Okay,
one more season, 3 specials, and they're gone. So, but yeah, we're going to be discussing that in length. Plus, also 5 actors and actresses who almost played the Doctor. So that's going to be part of it too. Obie show, me, my Scotch, and I, 10 o'clock on Friday nights. So we got to wrap this up. But yes, by all means, check that out. Whatever he may be drinking, see if you can match it. Basically something probably classy, I'm sure, something better than I can afford. But as always, you can find us on Twitter at Spanglish SSW Sports Den, and on Facebook and also on Instagram at Spanglish World Sports Den. For Mr. JD Walker, Mr. Rob Stats, welcome back, sir. Mr. Obie Spencer, I'm Scott Churchson. Have a great night, have a great day, and be awesome. Thanks.